I am finally here. I am starting the famous, or infamous, Trails of Cold Steel, the Erebonian arc. Apparently one of the more divisive arcs among hardcore fans, and a common starting point for those looking to get into the series. As not to incur the wrath of the Falcom Hive, I started from the beginning, Sky first chapter, and worked my way to Trails of Cold Steel. Normally I would pair Cold Steel 1 and Cold Steel 2 together in one video, but for reasons, I think it's better to keep them separate. Now before I talk about where I stand in this polarizing entry, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 60k, and with your help, I know I can do it. Thank you! A few things. It's important to note Trails from Zero/Azure and Trails of Cold Steel are happening at the same time. I bring this up now because you are directly thrown into the action, and if you've played Zero, you know exactly what is happening. If you haven't, then, as far as you're concerned, oh shit, we're stopping some railguns. But I will say, as someone coming from the Crossbell arc, it is painful not picking up directly where Azure left off. Azure has the best ending so far in regards to leaving me wanting more. I want to add the Crossbell arc and Cold Steel 1, and perhaps 2, spoil each other. I would actually say you can start here after you finish Sky. Either way, you'll have board knowledge. But let it be known, even with additional board knowledge, I promise you there are plenty of surprises to be had, gaps to be filled, and questions that demand answers. But alas, new arc, new protagonist, new country, new school! We follow Reen Schwarzer, joining Erebonia's esteemed Thor's Military Academy. Something I was looking forward to seeing is how Erebonia differs from the hodunky state of Liberal and the technologically advanced state of Crossbell. And it felt like a weird in-between. They have cars, and their Arcus devices could be used as cell phones. But the orbal net isn't commonplace in Erebonia, and rather than getting missions from a computer, you get it in paper in your school locker. It was interesting, and frankly made me miss Crossbell dearly. So, Reen and several other students are selected to be a part of a new class. Typically, there are 5 classes, and this year they decided to add a 6th class known as Class VII. Yes, I'm aware of how that sounds. This is a class that blends nobility and commoners for the first time in Thor's history. Now let's introduce the classmates. Elliot Craig. This is my son. I love him, he's just a sweet bean, a good kid who loves music. And you know, he's a little clever. Also one of my favorite healers of all time. Gaius Wurzel, yo, he's so lame. He's a foreign student who doesn't shut the fuck up about wind.
The winds must be on our side.
They must be, because that was a breeze.
I get it, it's part of his culture and there's beauty in that, but it feels like every chance he gets, he just talks about the wind. The wind favor us, the winds bode ill here, the winds from my asshole smell ominous. I'm sorry, but he is my least favorite character thus far. Another surprising least favorite, but he redeemed himself, was Machias, who carries a heavy prejudice against nobility. And he's such an ironic character. But this leaves room for a lot of growth in the future, and we do get to see some growth throughout Cold Steel 1. And this brings us to Machias' noble rival, Husis, who is my favorite Class 7 member. I am a sucker for guys with a better-than-you attitude, but they keep it on the low. He doesn't brag about his nobility, nor does he expect to be treated differently being the son of one of the 4 great houses. However, he does not tolerate being spoken down to, which I like a lot. You know who I like more? His brother. But he's not a part of Class 7. So moving on to Emma. She is your studious offensive mage, and I like her. Something's up. Moving on to Fee, a lethargic young lady. She seems not to care, but also seems a lot stronger than what she leads on. I thought I'd really love her, but she's fine. Laura, a swordswoman who hits hard. She's honorable, and I don't love her either. She's very lukewarm. Elisa, a light tsundere trope, which I really appreciate. I thought she was gonna go ham in the tsundere trope, but she has her moments, but they're very few and far between, which I like. And of course, Reen, good guy, helpful, strong-willed, has some sort of past, textbook JRPG protagonist. Gonna be honest, I'm not really in love with Class 7. I don't hate him, I just feel incredibly middle of the road. Save for 2 people I genuinely care for, Elliot and Husis. Although, I will say I find myself enjoying the characters outside of Class 7 way more. Like Class 7's instructor, Sarah. She's hilarious, very lax, and loves her booze. The only female character to rival my likeness for her is this woman. This woman right here, perfection. Her name, Sharon. And an unpopular opinion, I like Angelica. Is she hypersexual? Yes. Is she a lot? Yes. Do I care? A little, but not enough to take away from the fact that she is a rebellious monk, and I love that. And mentioned before, Husis' older brother, Rufus. Not gonna lie, don't have a reason to like him other than he's fine as hell, and his voice, bruh, makes a woman weak.
But
I jest. Father's instructions were that I should do with you as I wish. So, considering the circumstances of your visit, I've had a hotel room prepared.
Oh, Rufus, you shouldn't have, you naughty man. Anyways, this is just the introductory game, so I'm trying to keep my criticisms light as I know there's 3 more games coming. And hopefully my opinion of them will continue to skew positively the more I spend time with them. But until then, I am still a bracer/SSS girl, baby. So the idea of most Kiseki entry points is to get to know the locals, the lay of the land, yada yada. We have a new cast, new region, and that is essentially this game, while also learning of the tensions in Erebonia. A civil war is on the horizon. We have a noble faction who wants to keep the status quo, nobles rules and commoners rule. These are led by the nobles of the 4 great houses. And then there's the reformist section, which are backed by high-ranking commoners by birth or nobles who share the same progressive values, aka down with nobles rule and commoners rule. It focuses on throwing away Erebonian traditions. And while that sounds great, the reformist faction is responsible for annexing many of the less fortunate nations. There's just a lot. No side is pure, so they're not exactly the good guys either. And frankly, for the majority of this entry, things are pretty smooth. We meet folks from both sides and everyone is amicable. At most there's some tension, but fists aren't flying. Yet. Now mentioned before, this is the school life, and it's sort of Kiseki's take on Persona from a social simulator point of view. It has a calendar, and I don't even want to say system. It doesn't have a bunch of moving parts, it's more to help the player with the timeline of events. So typically it starts with class, what's going on, preparing for training, and a field study, but before that, you have a free day. Free days are spent preparing, shopping, mini games, my favorite being playing Blade, but that's more so on the train ride to wherever your field study is. Blade might be my favorite card game in JRPG history because it's so simple. But more importantly, free days should be spent with available classmates. It costs 1 bonding point per classmate, and yes, you will not be able to hang out with all of them. This was to encourage replayability, and to that I say, no thank you, I'll watch them all on YouTube. Anyways, you hang out with your classmates and raise their link level, which comes into play during combat later on. And finally, take on quests. Each free day you're expected to explore an old schoolhouse, which mysteriously shifts every month. From there, you have a training exam where you fight some dummy robot. Then your field study, where Class 7 is divided into teams not of your choosing, and you're sent on a mission essentially to know the locals, lay of the land, and the politics. Of course, it's not so simple, as shady happenings occur at every field study, slowly opening the player to the political turmoil that is soon to ravage Erebonia, from the underhanded nobles to terrorism. And I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, but yes, the pacing is still unbalanced, the story to gameplay ratio is awful, I found myself breezing through dungeons, the actual dungeon crawling in Kiseki is like 45 minutes per, the final dungeon obviously more, but then you're just hit with dialogue of hours and quests. And yes, there are ways to mitigate this, like talk to no NPCs and don't do any of the optional quests. But then are you really playing? Because admittedly, that's just part of the Kiseki charm. Because after every major story event, NPC dialogue changes. They react to the world. Same with quests. Diving a little deeper into quests, there are optional side quests, and some of them are hits, some of them are misses, and some of them are hidden. I'm telling you now, try to enjoy the quests for what they are. They may not serve the overarching story, as some of them are about classmates trying to uncover a secret admirer. Sometimes it's a clever way to test the player's knowledge of the world. Or my favorite, fighting monsters, because it's the one time I'm not mashing the X button. So my journey, I was doing really well in the beginning, being patient with the game, talking to everyone, just enjoying the ride for what it was. However, as more super suspicious characters joined and things started to escalate, I found my patience wearing thin. And this is a good-bad thing, right? Good because I was super eager to know what's happening next. However, bad because as a result, it was me speaking to less NPCs and making beelines for the next objective. I did do every optional quest though, and I managed to find a few hidden quests. Not a lot though, as I did not use a guide. I did feel impatient. I cared less about NPC classmates and I wanted to know who the fuck Sharon is. And I'm proud to say you do get that answer at the end of Cold Steel 1 because honey, I needed to be proven right. All I can do is encourage you to be patient. Understand that you will play for hours and only click X or A and move the joystick along. I still stand by the fact that the Kiseki series is a glorified visual novel. And that's a pity because the combat is really good, albeit it's gotten easier. And I think this is because the developers know that the Kiseki is a very intimidating series to get into due to the sheer number of games there are. It's daunting, so they lowered the barrier to entry with easy and once rewarding gameplay. And yes, you can argue this is on me because you can change the difficulty. I just never play games on hard. I never have, and I feel weird and scared starting. I always play on normal unless otherwise stated. But I also believe games should be able to balance normal and not be easy. To give you an idea how easy this game was, I deliberately didn't buy any quartz for like 3 or 4 chapters, maybe save for like 1. I only worked with the quartz I had on hand and I didn't struggle in the slightest. So what does this all mean? Let me back up. There are dungeon areas, monsters roam. If they tag you from the back, you're ambushed. If you hit them from the back and you manage to stun them, you get various advantages. It's important to try out different weapon types against different enemies. They're all weak to something different. And while I never encountered it, but if you're stronger than them, if you hit them, they'll instantly die, which is nice. So in battle, you see a turn order on your left. You can do a standard attack, use arts, which are magic, and take another turn to cast. Crafts are unique to characters, and their skills to be used instantly, and cost craft points, or CP. Craft points are gained by attacking or being attacked, and can be restored by certain crafts and arts. There are S-crafts, which are powerful moves that can be used as long as you have 100 CP or more. 200 CP means the craft is even stronger. Besides some character or enemy icons, you'll see turn bonuses. Yellow hearts that heals health, blue heals MP, exclamation means a guaranteed critical. There are a few new turn bonuses such as zero arts, meaning spells cost nothing and activate immediately, or something spooky like zero CP, meaning it drains your CP to 0. You'll want to keep a close eye on these because you don't want enemies restoring health or landing critical hits, but you also don't want to land on any negative effects, so you'll have to manipulate the timeline by using arts or S-breaks. S-breaks can be used immediately to cut ahead as long as you have 100 CP or more. But aside from a few turn bonuses, what else is new, you may ask? Cold Steel introduces the Arcus as its new Orbment system. You can link with characters to perform follow-up attacks, and as the story progresses, you can have the whole squad pulling up for a team attack. Who you're linked with affords their partner extra perks, like auto-healing after taking damage, or if the enemy's health is low, they'll do an extra attack to kill it. Another thing I must commend them on, but didn't engage with much due to the low difficulty, is how benched characters are handled. You can have 2 to 3 benched characters, and you can finally switch with them. The only penalty is their next turn is delayed, and you're unable to switch them back out on the same turn. I do think this is an amazing addition because Kiseki has so many damn characters, and it's downright disrespectful that you could barely use them all. I also really enjoy that CS1 has a lot of guest characters, giving players a taste of future allies. Angelica and Sarah are the best ones. Yeah, I said it. If you've played any Kiseki games before this, it's pretty par of the course with a few added bells and whistles, and I think that's great. It's easy to jump into. But they did rework the Orbment system quite a bit. So Orbments are the devices you can install quartz in. Quartz are responsible for augmenting your stats and dictating what arts you have access to. How you get quartz is by collecting sepith, found in chests and dropped by enemies. X amount of sepith will earn you X quartz. Now, a few differences. The biggest one, before you had to add up different elemental values to get a specific spell. Take Aerial. In Trails in the Sky the Third, Aerial takes 3 wind and 1 time elemental value. In Cold Steel, the quartz just teaches you Aerial, period. Another thing was the line system. You would have to have all the quartz on a specific line to total their value for specific spells. Well, now that you don't learn spells that way, you can equip the same type of quartz on the same lines, specifically stat boosters. So that means you can have HP 1 and 2 equipped, and yes, they stack. You could even stack quartz that cause ailments or stat down quartz as long as they're on different lines. Now you can poison, petrify, and freeze if you wanted. Previously, status raising quartz used to raise one stat and lower another. Raise attack, lower defense. Now they have no drawbacks. And master quartz are still a thing, and level up far quicker than how they did when they were first introduced in the crossbell games, which means you could swap them out and actually use new master quartz you find in your journey. These work in a similar way. They gain experience and grant boons, do the wear more attack, defense, speed, as well as spells. The problem is, the master quartz most everyone initially starts out with honestly feels like the best quartz for them. There is no reason to remove Reen's initial quartz, which gains CP based on the kills he gets. It's beautiful. Also rare quartz that allow a spell and grant stat enhancements. You can see the difference by looking if one has a shine to it. Now, I'm not deep into the Kiseki fandom in fear of spoilers, so let me know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I actually prefer the old system. Keep the master quartz, but reworking of the basic quartz automatically granting spells, removing the elemental value system, I was a little sad to see it go. I really enjoyed the thought-provoking way of building your character, working for those spells, trying to maximize what spells you can learn while balancing stat trade-offs. And while the line system was initially confusing, I really came to enjoy it, and it gave characters a better sense of shaping of what role to play, a spellcaster or a hard hitter or a mix of the two. The new way isn't bad, but I find it significantly easier. and I wonder if this was just another way for developers to lower the barrier to entry into the Kiseki series. Also, I didn't use a lot of arts. I mainly used support arts as a means to manipulate the timeline. There was a lot of rebalancing from Azure to Cold Steel, let me tell you. I think spells cost way more, and finally giving me a reason to equip the EP cost lowering quartz. But also, some of them were just kind of busted. Like Chrono Burst, being able to retake the next 2 turns immediately? Busted. Also, there were a lot of amazing crafts that restored a healthy amount of craft points. So while I'd certainly say if you've played any Kiseki games prior, it does tweak just enough to make you think a little differently. And I do think that's a good thing to keep folks on their toes, but unfortunately, I prefer their original setup. Now, this is the first graphical leap we're getting in the Kiseki series, and wow, what a difference. Mind you, I'm playing the PS4 version on a PS5, so obviously it looks cleaner than the Vita, which is blurry and has a low frame rate than the PlayStation 4 version, which is locked at a smooth 60 frames per second. For me, seeing them in this new style, they're no longer confined to their chibi forms. It absolutely gives PS3 energy, which is what it came out on in Japan and the Vita as well. While I do like it, I'm not gonna lie, it feels weirdly nostalgic looking back where I started with Sky. I do kind of miss the claymation-ish dolls, but I'm embracing the new graphical leap. What really excites me is seeing old faces in this new style. Like, oh my god, I remember when you were just a cute little chibi person, and look at you now. I truly think there's something thrilling about watching a series grow up, regardless if it's Kiseki, Breath of Fire, Pokemon, and so on. Just knowing where we started and where we are and where we're going. And I hear, can't confirm because I'm dodging future games like the plague, but Cold Steel 1 and 2 are consistent with their look, and apparently there's another graphical leap that Cold Steel 3 and 4 share, and I'm excited to see when I get there. My one nitpick is when characters are talking, I don't like the 3D models. I wish they stuck to the crossbow arc and kept character portrait art. Other than that, no complaints. And lastly, the music. Falcom in general always has spot-on music, and it doesn't disappoint here either. But more appreciated this time around is not just the music, but English voice acting. And while yes, I'm still on my Japanese learning journey, it's far easier to consume the large amount of information in your mother tongue. Plus, they took a few quality of life features away that made it even harder to retain the information. So in Zero and Azure, you could pull up a chat log and repeat lines, and you could have it automatically play instead of having to press A or X. Unfortunately, because Cold Steel 1 came out before Zero and Azure did in the States, we didn't get those conveniences. At most, if you go in the menu, you could listen to the last 50 lines of dialogue, but it also counts repetitive dialogue, like announcing there's a treasure chest or a rare or dangerous monster, which pushes out story-related conversation. It's not as smooth as Zero and Azure, where you could pull up the chat log anytime outside of battle, and it even retained more. So it felt a little backwards. But anyways, the English voice acting we do get is solid. I actually really like some of their voices. It's weird because normally you have this base expectation of the voices will be good. Fine. But there were some voices where I was like, damn, this casting is fire. Mainly Rufus, I already said, but his voice does something for me. Angelica, she has a sexy voice, and I could listen to her all day too. Sharon's voice is peak maid voice. The radio show hostess, they did a fantastic job. But there's always one, and that is Laura. I cannot stand her voice. Her voice does get better, but initially, her voice sounds like a girl trying to sound like a guy. I will wield my blade in honor of my family. That is how she sounds to me, and I hate it.
I'd like to withdraw from active combat and take a more supporting role for the duration of this field study.
So, my favorite song, it's tough because I found most of the songs to be good. Solid. The problem was, none besides the final dungeon really stood out to me. It's really a stretch for me to be like, whoa, this song is what I keep coming back to. Like, I guess I'll pick Machinery Attack, but I'm not gonna lie, I think it's because it reminds me of Danganronpa, and Danganronpa has fire music. of Cold Steel 1. It's pretty fine. This is an entry arc to the longest arc in the Kiseki series, so I'm trying to be patient as it sets the stage. This is probably more of a me problem, but as you're like left on peak cliffhanger, and Cold Steel 1 and 2, they're taking place at the same time, and I was a little frustrated that I just wasn't like kicking off just where Azure left off. It's just me not having patience. Cold Steel 1, it's just a setup, and it's doing a good job introducing new characters, the political intrigue, trickling in brand new gameplay mechanics. I will say, adding robots into the mix lowered my excitement a bit, not a mech girl. But luckily for you all, you guys didn't tell me that, and you trapped me in this series. I'm already 6 games deep, I can't quit now. My favorite thing, not just about Cold Steel, but Kiseki in general, is the breadcrumbs and the continuity. And if you follow the breadcrumbs, you just start connecting things, and it's really exciting. I think that's a mark of great storytelling. I love connecting the dots before the characters do. The amount of times I'm proven correct or even incorrect, I love that in fact, because it thwarts my expectations and opens up into something grander. Now, definitely look forward to a Cold Steel 2 review coming up. In fact, I'm on Act 2 right now. I just finished the Ruhr portion, so for those who know, we'll have an idea where I'm at right now as I'm filming. But realistically, by the time this review goes live, I've probably beaten it. And that's where this review ends for the folks who have not played Cold Steel 1 and who are interested in Cold Steel 1. And if you have played it, stick around because I have some spoiler thoughts. That was your spoiler warning, by the way. Are you ready? Let's talk spoilers. Here we go. Unpopular opinion, didn't like this mask reveal. Didn't like it. I thought Zero was significantly better. I'll even take the masked person from Sky. I will say, Cold Steel 1 masked person, I was so wrong. I swore it was Clotilde. Because see, Clotilde, it makes sense. I also low-key spoiled myself. I looked at the back of the box art for Cold Steel 2, which literally has Clotilde right there, and she looks evil. So I was like, clearly, I had this whole theory. I was like, look, like the way like C's coat or like, I don't know, coat robe thing goes over his chest. I was like, they're trying to diminish his chest. I was really coming off of Zero, right? But like, I was like, that's a woman, that's a woman. I really thought I figured it out, y'all. Who it was, awesome, loved it. But the staging death or like, oh, we used microphones. I just thought that was so lame. I thought that reveal was so lame. But once you know who went missing from Class 7 and his name starts with C, I was like, oh no. Oh no. So yeah, mixed feelings on that. I would have done it so Clotilde and Crow were both the masked person. I thought it was like 2 people playing one. I thought that would have been genius, but whatever. Next up, Sharon. I had that girl's number. I knew in my soul this woman was Ouroboros. When she was like, oh, I have 2 employers, I was like, we know, girl, we know. But we love Sharon in this house. In fact, I love her even more after playing Cold Steel 2. Emma too was very sus to me in this, but like now playing Cold Steel 2, I'm like, all right, you all right, we cool now. And lastly, calling it now, Thomas is a Grail shitter. Yes, that's what I call them. I know they say something else, but it sounds like Grail shitter to me, so that's what I call them. Don't care. I feel it in my soul he's a church boy, because the church is all about artifacts, and what was he? A history teacher, you know? And I'm just like, history, artifacts, right? So, like, listen, the Crossbell art caught me off guard, but I will be caught off guard no longer. Because I think his cover is being, like, the goofball with those big dorky glasses and just always being silly all the time. I'm like, no. I've seen this trope before. You ain't slick. You're somebody important. And at the end there, you could kind of see he holds his own, so... But don't confirm that. I don't know yet. Even as deep as I am in Cold Steel 2, nothing has been confirmed, so just let me figure it out. Let me be right. Let me be wrong. But in the event I am right, I could say I told you so. And if I'm wrong, I'm just never gonna bring it up again. But yeah, that's really what I wanted to get off my chest. So thank you so much for watching. Check out more of my Kiseki content here. Join me on Patreon, and I would love your support as I continue my journey with these great JRPGs. You get to vote on the next games I play and join the Discord. With that said, I love your faces, and I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!